Hello!
Welcome back. Today we're going to start our electrical setup.
Before we begin, everything that we're doing we learned on the internet, so take everything we say with a grain of salt. Our main source of information was this channel called Explorists. They really go in depth on what each component does, and that's where we learn most of everything that we know. Alright, so these are the batteries. They're 100 amp hours each. So we're gonna have 300 amp hours of power. These are gonna store the energy that we produce from our solar panels and from our B2B charger.
This morning we've been productive. We were upstairs and we drew up a bunch of different ways that we could line up our electrical. So this is gonna be a C-shaped couch. So we're missing a little bench right here at the back. We're gonna have to add supporting beams right here to build this box out. So we figured we could use that for two purposes. So we're going to use these supporting beams to build the box, but we're also going to use them on the inside of this to put up our inverter. Our inverter is very big and it's very heavy, so we have to make sure this is very structurally sound. It actually comes with a nice little pamphlet with very nice drawings of how you're meant to do this. It comes with this plate. This is the plate where the top is going to be slid into, and then you just screw it in from the bottom, so it's not like you have to mount two different plates and make sure they're at the right height. It says here in the instructions that you have to have a 10 centimeter clearance on the top and on the sides. This tape right here represents 10 centimeters from the top. This marking right here that we've done is the spot where our piece of wood that's going to be load bearing for this has to go. As you can see, we've put in the brackets, looking nice. So now we're going to use these L brackets. They're 30 by 30, and we're going to use them at the bottom and at the top to really reinforce this, make sure this doesn't go anywhere.
I'll just pick it up.
Slide it on top. More to the left? Yeah, like that.
That's it.
Oh no. It's right at the bottom. It hits right at the bottom, so, you know.
But we had to do it like this.
No, but...
There's enough room for cables.
Alright, yeah?
There's
Yeah, there's plenty of space,
there's
actually.
Enough room for cables.
That's on there. Now I just need to screw it into the back, and we're golden. This is our lynx distributor. On the lynx, we have these two nubs. The red nub is going to be wired to our master disconnect, so we can switch off power to our entire system. And then on the black nub, we're going to add our shunt, which is here in this picture. It's inside the box. I don't want to take it out. And then this shunt is what's going to enable us to read the battery charge on our batteries. So this is the big thing that we have to put up next, and we're going to now build the wall that's going to support it. So we've already built a tiny wall here. Yesterday we put up this L-shaped piece here. So this is going to be the wall for the master disconnect and the shunt. But now we have to finish building the wall here for our links. We've already attached the top two screws. We're using 4.5 by 30 millimeter screws. Now I'm going to have to use a tiny version of the screwdriver because we don't really have a lot of space between our inverter and our links. The lid. Do you know how this goes on? Like that?
That's how it is. I just screwdriver it in.
Look, come here, check this out. 10.5, and we need 10. So it's like...
It's right on the money.
On the money. We haven't filmed it because it's been raining. It's kind of raining right now. We've installed a few more components. We have our MPPT Solar charge controller. This is gonna allow us to basically convert the energy from the solar panels into usable energy for our batteries. The wire that hooks up to this from the solar panels needs to pass through a breaker, and this breaker is gonna live right here. So that's the solar breaker. Then we have another breaker. This is our DC breaker. This is our 230 volt. It comes out of the wall here. This is what powers all of our 230 volt outlets. This one is going to go somewhere around here. Here we have our DC to DC charger. These are the cables that are going to hook up at the front to our starter battery, and then they're going to hook up here to the DC to DC charger, and this is gonna allow us to charge our batteries when we're driving. We've also put up our fuse block over here. This is our 12-volt fuse block. This is where all of our 12-volt appliances are gonna be wired to. We already have a few wires here that we're gonna have to work with. Next step in our wiring is gonna be putting ring terminals on all of these wires that are coming out of the wall here. These are all 12-volt appliance wires that we're gonna run to our fuse block. So we have two yellow ones. These are 12 to 10 gauge. We're gonna use that for our 12 gauge wire, which is this thicker one here. And then we have 6 of these blue ones. These are 16 to 14 gauge, and we're gonna use that for our 16 gauge wires, which are these white ones. We've put ring terminals on all of our 12-volt wires that are going to connect to our fuse block. Now we're going to put some ferrules on these two 6-gauge wires. These are going to connect to our B2B.
Now we're going to put in these ferrules on the tip of each wire. This is what's going to make the connection to the B2B charger. We got this huge kit that actually came with the ferrule tool.
Looks nice. It's like a little square. Nice.
So we're really proud because we just got done making our very first battery connection cable. We're going to show you exactly how we did it because we have 3 more to do. So this is our setup for cutting the huge cable that we have. We're actually using 2/0 gauge wire. These are just some metal cutting pliers that we found at our hardware store.
After cutting, this is what you get. These are the terminals we're using. First layer is off. Now it's the hard part of trying to get rid of the inner sleeve. After using that tool, this is what we get. Just kind of like an indentation. So I'm going to go in with my X-Acto and try to just slowly and carefully, without harming any of the inner copper wires, remove that. So after the X-Acto, this is what it looks like. This is the best we can do. It's not the cleanest of cuts, but I mean, we weren't about to buy like super expensive tools to use once, so this is what's going on. We've gotten slightly better at this from our first one to now. Our M8 terminals fit in there, snug, like that. Now it's time to crimp this down. Because we didn't want to invest in a massive crimping tool, we have a crimping tool that works with a hammer. So we're gonna basically hammer it in. We'll show you how it works. We use our earplugs so that the noise isn't too bad. Is that at the tip?
Yep.
How do I pull this?
Pull up. Looks nice, yeah?
Perfect. Now that the wire is fully crimped and it's not going anywhere, we're using some heat shrink. We bought all of our cable black. Some of it's going to be positive, some of it's going to be negative. They didn't have any red wire. So what we're using to distinguish between positive and negative is heat shrink. This one's going to be a positive one, so we're heat shrinking some red sleeves on it, and this way we know this is a positive. Before we wire the batteries together, we're going to give the connections a nice vacuum because we don't want any dust particles on the batteries. And then we're going to use some rubbing alcohol to clean the terminals on the batteries as well as the terminals on all of the cables. This is just procedure to make sure you get the best connection.
So we're going to wire them positive to positive to positive, and then negative to negative to negative.
We had our batteries turned off this entire time. We're about to put up our ANL fuse. This is going to connect to our master disconnect. Now that our battery bank is wired together, the next step is going to be wiring our A&L fuse. On this A&L fuse holder, we're going to have a 300 amp fuse by BUILD Systems. So there's a side that says bus, and then there's a side that doesn't say anything. So we're going to wire it with the bus facing that way. That's where our positive is going to come out of the A&L and into our master disconnect. Now I'm just undoing the screw on our positive on the battery. Slide this into the A&L washer and nut. Okay. That feels tight, but not too tight. This is our cable that's going to run from our A&L to our master disconnect. It has an M8 terminal on the A&L side, because that's the size we need for this. But then on the other side, the side that connects to the switch, is an M10, because it's a bigger screw, basically. We're going to have to break off this bottom piece here to accommodate for our cable. Now that we have our positive wired from the A&L, we're going to wire it to our master disconnect. At the back of this master disconnect switch, you have an input and output label. Based on our electrical video that we used to follow to wire everything, it's kind of arbitrary. It doesn't really matter which one you use as input and output because it changes depending on whether the batteries are charging or not. For us, we're actually going to use the input as an output and vice versa. That's just how things align better for us. We have this very short, tiny cable. It has an M10 terminal on one side and an M8 terminal on the other side. The M8 terminal is going to connect to our lynx. Okay, so I'm going to start with the A&L cable. So put it into the output, even though it's technically an input, but it doesn't matter. A&L part is on. Now it's time to do the lynx parts. M10 terminal is going to go on here. This is quite a thick cable, so we really had to turn it in as much as possible so that it leaves room here for the screws to go in. But we just tried it and it works.
Perfect.
So now we're going to have to screw this into place here. We bought these two M8 bolts with nuts. We need these for the lynx connection to the switch and to the shunt. The lynx doesn't come with these, so we had to separately buy them. We've wired the master DC in. It's connected under here to the A&L fuse, and then on the side here to our lynx. We had to break off this side of the switch cover here. We've put in 80 mil long screws. We've tested. These indeed hold the switch in place, and it's not falling off the wall when we try to turn it on and off. Now we're moving on to our shunt. Okay, there you go. That's out. This one we're gonna do the other way around. So we put this one at the back. We're gonna have to put this one at the front because of this massive cable going to the switch. We've put in, like, kind of loosely the cable that's going to connect to the lynx. We've also put in two cables. This gray one is going to go to our battery monitor. And then we've put in this tiny red cable, and this one connects to the lynx. Both of these cables came with the battery monitor shunt pack. So yeah, let's put this in. So before we do this connection right here, we're going to actually join another cable, which is going to be our ground for the lynx. We're going to ground the lynx so that pretty much every other component doesn't have to be grounded because everything comes to the lynx. So that's going to have to sit on there as well. And yesterday evening, Rico actually took care of the ground connection already. So our ground that we're using is here at the back next to the doors on this like panel type thing. If you come in closer, you can see that's where it is. There were already some wires grounded there. We took out this nut and we added these two wires. This one is the ground for our MPPT. It's not wired anywhere yet, but it's grounded already. And then this big one is the lynx ground that we are now going to attach to the lynx. Now we're going to tighten up this bolt right here. That's going to finish this connection to the shunt from the lynx. Oops, remove this. Because we're now going to do the connection to this point right here. We're hooking this up specifically on the opposite battery to the one where we hooked up the A&L. The reason why this cable here, the negative that goes from the battery to the shunt, is so long is because it has to have the same length as the positive cable coming from the battery through the ANL and from the ANL to our master disconnect. We're going to use this little cable that came with our lynx to get power into our shunt. This part connects to the lynx, this part connects to the shunt. We cut, stripped, crimped, and heat shrunk this cable together because it was massive and we didn't need so much, so we made it smaller. Just gonna pop it in there. Under these cables and into our shunt. So we've already completed the first steps of installing our battery monitor. We started by installing the shunt that came in the kit. Now the final step is to actually hook up the monitor. For that we're using this massive data cable that came inside the box as well, and we're just gonna basically hook it up to the monitor and see what happens.
Now first to turn on our system, we're gonna have to go and turn on each battery individually using the cable provided by the batteries.
That one seems to already be on.
Because they're connected, this probably turned all of them on at the same time. Afterwards, we're gonna have to turn on our master disconnect to the on position, and then we're gonna have power flowing through our circuit.
Okay, nothing exploded.
So we finished setting up on the Victron app. Right now, this is reading the parameters from our batteries. Now we're gonna turn off the master DC and continue the wiring. So right now I'm removing the front cover of the inverter because next step is gonna be doing the inverter lynx connections. We're gonna connect a positive, a negative, and a ground wire. Bottom first.
Our lynx is already grounded to the van, so now we're gonna ground our inverter to our lynx. So I'm gonna do the connection for the lynx first, and then Rico is gonna do the connection for the inverter, which is a bit trickier because it's down there. The camera's like disappeared behind the inverter, but you can see what Rico is doing. So he's undoing the nut on the inverter ground.
Could you yank it a little bit more to that side? Give me less.
So Rico is slotting in the positive. Yeah, that's in. That's through. This shot is terrible, guys. I'm so sorry. This is the best we can do. Now we have the positive and the negative wires coming from the inverter, and we have to hook them up to the lynx. These top 4 bolts are positive bolts, and then under these like flaps we have the negative bolts under there. The wire's in.
So we put in the negative wire coming from the inverter right here, below this little flap. Before we put in the positive wire for the inverter, we have to remove these 2 nuts, put in our 300 amp fuse, and then connect the positive wire on the bottom nuts. Stand back just in case.
Oh my gosh.
I'm joking. Can I?
Yeah.
I saw a light.
Did you?
Yep. It's green, look. You see
Oh
the
my
green
god!
lights?
Yeah! So we've switched off our master DC again and our inverter. We're now going to do the connections between our lynx and our fuse block. This is going to allow us to get power to the fuse block, which is where all of our 12-volt components are going to be wired to. The negative's connected to the fuse block. Now it needs to connect to our lynx. I think it has to go on this one. That's okay with you.
That one, that's fine.
Okay. So we just put the negative under this flap, so I'm going to put the fuse right above it. Someone's calling me. We're going to put in our positive.
We just bought this fuse kit on Amazon. These are spade fuses and they're medium sized, which is what our 12-volt fuse block takes. And we're going to use the reading lights to test if our 12-volt fuse block connections are working properly. Alright, so we're going to go with the 5. It's this one.
5.
Yeah.
I think it's the top one, if I'm not
Reading
mistaken.
lights. It's this one.
Reading lights. Okay, so these are the wires. We're going to connect the negatives to the top here and then the positives to the bottom. The fuse is in. That's it?
Yep, that's it.
Now we're gonna flip the switch. You can flip it, honey.
Yeah.
They're both on.
They were already on. That was very anticlimactic, but in a good way.
Okay, but yeah, they do have a button so we can switch them off. Nice! These are the cables that come out of the fan. They're identified with positive and negative, which is nice. These are our pre-wiring cables that we put in also a while ago. We're gonna make this connection right now. These are 16 gauge wires. We have this extension cord that's running all the way up to our apartment right now.
We're gonna test out our trusty Max Air fan that, fingers crossed, is gonna work. Didn't blow.
Okay. Oh my gosh. The
Did
fan
you hear
beeped.
it?
Yeah, it beeped. Oh my god.
It's opening. You see that? It's gonna flip now. I didn't turn it off. I just made it flip. That's so cool.
It closes. Awesome. I mean, at least we have two components that work. The lights also work. We have our ground wires here. This one is the MPPT ground that isn't connected at the bottom to the MPPT yet.
Two of the washers are gonna stay on the screw head sides, so above the wire lug. The serrated one is supposed to be in between the lug and the MPPT, so right there. It's in a very tough spot, isn't it?
It's in a very tough spot. But it's done.
Oh, it's nice and tight though.
This is one of the wires we prepped for the MPPT to lynx connection. On this end, we have the M8 regular terminal that we've used for all the lynx components. And then on this terminal, we have a ferrule. This ferrule is what's going to go into our MPPT.
We're going to have a negative and a positive wire running from the lynx to the MPPT. Right now, we already connected our negative wire to the lynx. And now we're going to connect our positive wire right here. But before we can connect the positive wire, we need to slot in our 80 amp mega fuse.
So our MPPT is very low to the ground, so we can't really show you the ferrule end going in, but you can kind of hear it. And that is in there. So now I have to tighten it. I put it into the negative because this is our negative wire.
Nice. So now our MPPT shows up on the app, which is good news. That means it's receiving power. Now we're going to do a quick setup.
So we've pre-drilled some small holes and we're going with these 3mm by 20mm screws for this. We've already screwed in the bottom. Now we're going to do this top screw. These are our solar cables that are coming from the roof of our van. They're connected to our solar panels. So these cables are going to go into this solar breaker through the top. They're going to get connected to our solar breaker. We have to strip these cables down so that they go into the slots on the breaker. We've run the cables into the breaker box. The reason why we're touching these cables so nonchalant, even though they are live wires from our solar panels, because it's nighttime, so we don't have to worry about solar energy. Now that these are in here, we have to connect them to our breaker. This is our breaker. It's in the off position.
Nes was able to connect the wires from the solar to the solar breaker, and now we just need to connect the bottom part that's going to go into the MPPT.
I'm gonna put the positive in. It's in there. It just needs tightening.
It's been a while since we installed the MPPT. There's been a lot of changes to the van that we're not going to spoil right now. You guys are going to have to watch the next videos. We've been using the solar power. It's been treating us good. We haven't been able to fully test our solar power yet because we don't have any appliances on 24/7. The little amount that we've been using it's been working out pretty well. I'm currently charging my phone using the solar power. Can you just close up here so I can explain some of the more technical details? There's actually a light on. The middle one is on right now, so that means it's in absorption mode. As you can see here, our BMV is showing 0 watts. So we're pulling 0 watts from the solar panels right now because our batteries are basically at 100%. It's trickle charging right now. And if we were to turn on something like this fan, for example, you would see that it would go negative at first. But then the MPPT is going to kick in and it's going to level out the usage of the wattage. So the Victron app is really cool because we can see the history of how much solar power we pulled. The bright white is the bulk
So that's when it's charging?
When
The
it's
the
really
batteries?
charging the most. This one is the absorption, this kind of grayish, and this faded one, this is the float. So we are mostly on float because we haven't been using a lot of the power, and you guys can see here past few days.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and the bottom here we have our lifetime total. So since we installed the MPPT, we've pulled 4 kilowatt hours.
Awesome.
That's it for this week's video, guys. We hope you enjoyed it. We left all of our sources down below so you guys can follow along from a less confusing source. We know we're not the best at explaining this stuff, but we hope it was understandable and it was enjoyable most of all. And we'll catch you on the next week's video.
Okay, so.
Sorry, you said queso.
Okay, so we've wired the screw in. I'm screwed up.